Hey, Hershey Free Church, core, middle school, students, families, and whoever else is watching this, I want to say thank you for being here. This video is being released April 15th for the week as we continue to plow through everything to do with the virus and what's going on. We want to keep things consistent with releasing our new teachings on Wednesday. So you should be seeing this on the 15th or shortly after the 15th. We continue in our series on Job to be filtering advice. So to give a quick review, the first week that we went through everything, we talked about how godly character leads to worship. Job lost everything in his life. The quantity of what he lost, we cannot even comprehend the quantity of what he lost. But in that, his response was to fall down and worship. And then last week we talked about how we need to filter all the advice that we get and receive, because Job received horrible advice from his wife, and then he received some subtly wrong advice from his friends, which had the premise of, this is how God works, Job. You've done something wrong, therefore you need to repent and you need to fix it. Then God is going to bless you and bring you back to the status where you used to be. And we learned that that is not how God works. Sometimes it might appear to work that way, but that is not how God works. And so we get into today where we're going to be talking about being humble before God and learning from what Job ultimately did. So as we get into the third week of being humble, what I want you to do, I'm asking you please, is to make some time to do some reading. If you could read Job 38, 1 through 11, which helps set up the end of the story, and also Job 40, 1 through 10, and then the very end, chapter 42. It's very fascinating to read all of that's going on as we finish up this study of Job. So please make the time to read those three passages. So as we look at the details at the end of the book of Job here, we see that Job ends up defending himself before God, saying, God, I'm kind of almost like proud of myself because I defended the error of the advice of my friends in front of you, to myself. I stood up for you and what you understand, what I understand that you are all about and everything. And look, this is what I did. I'm taking you at your word. I'm trusting you. I'm understanding your promises as much as I can, and I'm explaining everything. And God is like, great, really, really good. But hold up. And we find out that God talks to him through a storm and basically kind of puts Job in his place again and saying, that's great that you did that. And there are some things that you understand about me, but there's more that you do not understand about me. So sit down, son. I'm going to explain some more things to you. And so Job gets forced to realize how God works. And if you look in Job 40, we see that Job responds in silence to God. He literally puts his hand over his mouth because he's realizing, I thought that I had God figured out for the most part. I defended myself and my thinking and my ways before my friends who were giving faulty advice. And so, man, I thought I was doing great. But as soon as God starts talking and saying, Job, where were you when I created everything? When I set the parameters for all of this stuff? When I hung the clouds in the air and all these things? And Job is realizing, oh my goodness, there's way more that I don't know than I do know. And the passage says he literally covers his mouth and he responds to God in silence. Instead of trying to come across as an expert, he responds just to be quiet. And sometimes that's what we need to do. Yes, we need to take God at his word. Trust him in his promises and be as much of an expert as we can on how God works and live that way. But man, there is so much that we don't know about God. And a lot of times just be quiet and learn from God. Learn from God. In this day and age, it's hard to do that when everybody wants their 5 minutes of fame and to become the next big whatever, to show off how much you can do and let everybody see what you're all about. But to just be quiet before God was an amazing thing that Job did. And then God goes on to continue talking. And he just continues to teach more about his power. And God's ways are way above our ways, and how God does things to have justice be in the world is very, very different than what we normally think about and what we normally understand. And so we have to be able to release control of what we want to have going on to God. And so the second way that we see Job responding to God in Job chapter 42 is submission. Like there is a even further understanding and realizing that God, I don't know everything. Your ways are way greater than mine. And I need to sit here and listen to you and humbly submit myself to you in your ways. What we see in the passage is Job basically saying, God, I don't even have any more questions for you. I'm not going to appear to know a little bit. I'm just going to sit here and listen and to be in your presence. And the second thing that we see is that Job continues to say that I'm going to trust you. I'm going to act in faith, but I'm going to trust you at your word and not try and completely figure everything out about you. Because, guys, sometimes in life, we get to know why. We get to understand the why at the end of the story, and other times we don't. But the point is not to get things figured out or get the answer that we want. The point is for us to continue to act in faith, to learn what God wants us to learn. So it is not about getting the answer we want, everything all packaged up, and by the end of the hour show that we understand everything and we can move on to the next. No, it is a continued journey of being with God in the process of all that stuff that's going on. So this week it's going to be really, really short. So there should not be an excuse not to read the passage or watch the whole video. And any comments that you make, I would really appreciate it. Not because of anything to do with YouTube views and that kind of stuff, but I want to know, are you even watching? Are you interacting? And what help can I be? Because I'm realizing that programming for Poor right now is kind of being thrown out the window. We're doing something different as best as we can, but I want to continue along with your leaders to be pastors, shepherds in your life and to guide and to answer questions and to be with you in those ways. And so to just wrap things up is, yes, there's a lot that we know about God. God has revealed a lot about himself, but there's a lot that we don't know. And so we can never act like we've got it all figured out. God is not a formula. He's not a vending machine. He's not a spirit to appease, to get what we want and try and manipulate. So we have to understand that and be fine with the mysteries of God. And so in the end, what we see is that Job sits in dust and ashes, where we see Job at the beginning. He shaved his head, remember? And he put on different clothes, and he sat in dust and ashes. So at the end, this is where Job is. And he's saying that I'm going to submit myself to you, God. Your ways are better than my ways. Your ways are greater than my ways. And I'm going to continue to learn, to sit at your feet, to be silent, and to just learn from you. I choose to submit my ways to you. Job didn't choose the stuff that happened to him. All that stuff, nobody's going to choose that. And right now with this virus, we didn't choose it. How it's affecting our lives here in the United States, in Hershey, Hummelstown, E-Town, whatever it might be, we didn't choose it. But we can choose how we're going to respond and how we're going to react to this. So we can either get angry and upset because we all are experiencing a sense of loss. Loss of all the things that we were planning on, things that we wanted to do. And we didn't choose the fact that it's not going to happen for the most part until who knows when we're going to be released from all this kind of stuff. So our response needs to be, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to take you at your word. And just like Job said, though you take my life, I'm going to trust you. And I'm not going to try and figure everything out about you. We have promises. We have things that we can know and can understand, but we can't understand everything. And the point, again, to end is we are not to package God. We are not to demand that God gives us the answer to everything that's going on in our lives. But what we are supposed to do is to continue to trust God with faith, act on it, submit ourselves to God, be about his business, and eventually we might understand some of the big picture things, and we might not until we get to heaven. But that's the beauty of Christianity. That's kind of the frustrating part of Christianity, because we're acting on faith. That's what we need to do. So with a personal example of this is, a good friend of mine, we all know Mr. McElhaney, who took his life. I still don't understand why. I think about it sometimes, and I don't think about it at other times, but I'm not angry at God. I'm not demanding God give me answers. I'm just saying, God, when I don't understand, help me to trust you. Help me to put my faith in you. And so I'm not sure what you're going through specifically when it comes to your life and being home for days on end and all this kind of stuff. But what I really hope that you'll do is take the lessons from Job, is to at the end, when your life is nothing but a story to tell, when how you handled this virus situation is nothing but a story to tell, what kind of story do you want to tell? Were you faithful to God, submitting to God, seeking God, or were you angry and frustrated and acting just foolish and juvenile with all kinds of just dumb behavior? What is it going to be? That's the choice that we have before all of us. And I hope that my life will prove that I'm going to continue to trust God with what I understand and with what I don't understand. That I'm going to submit myself to Him as somebody who's greater than me, who spoke everything to existence with His words. I wasn't there, and therefore I just got to sit at God's feet and listen to Him. So that's the challenge that I have for you. So guys, I'm recording this on Tuesday, April 14th, to be released again tomorrow. And guys, I cannot communicate with you how much I love you and I miss you. I miss hanging out and seeing the interactions happening. I miss that a ton. And I look forward to the day that we're going to be able to be back together and be able to celebrate and do some cool things. But until then, this is what we're going to be about. And so let's choose to make the best out of the situation and submit ourselves to God as we continue to learn. So thanks, guys. Love you.